The views expressed here are those of the authors and do not in any way represent the views of Sophia TV.
Assalamualaikum and welcome to another episode of Ladies First. I'm joined here by Sister Amina, Nishat, Sada and myself. I just want to go straight into it and discuss the latest thing in the news, which has been Ashbourne Care Home, which has been brought into the media because, don't know if you're aware of it, but they have quite a few dementia patients who have these I think they're caring dolls. I don't know what the correct word is. Comfort dolls, sorry. And with dementia patients, there is a study currently going on to see if these comfort dolls actually help the patient in terms of making them feel calm, and you're able to give the patient instructions via the comfort doll. So basically it's like a doll that most children have, Tiny Tears, whatever, other brands available, that are used with a lot of dementia. The dementia patients, and what happened was that the caregivers were torturing the doll in front of the patient, and it caused a lot of distress. So first of all, did any of you hear about it?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you know anything about comfort dolls, etc.?
Just from that video, I knew a bit about it. But I think that the issue that we were talking about isn't the fact that the dementia sufferer has the doll, it's how it was dealt with.
Yeah.
How the carer took the doll away. I mean, it wasn't in a professional way. It wasn't, there should be steps to maybe weaning the person off using the doll.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, it felt like bullying.
It was abuse. It was a form of abuse that the carers knew why this doll was being used and purposely tried to
film it on a phone, right?
Yeah, and purposely tried to, it's abusive behaviour at the end of the day. So my question to you is, basically, taking away the issue of the comfort doll, how do we in Islam view elderly people? I'm sure we have parents that are getting older and stuff. Well, how do we view care homes? I mean,
I don't think there's a clear answer to that question. Mm-hmm. I would venture to say that the vast majority of people, whether they're Muslim or not Muslim, who do put an elderly person in a care home do so because they think it's in the person's best interest. Mm-hmm. I know in our community there's a tendency to play this as an us versus them sort of thing, like look at those people in the West, they don't care about elderly people, their parents, they just put them in these homes and we take care of them and treat them well. But let's be honest, a lot of people put an elderly person in a care home because they physically can't care for them. I mean, if you're talking about someone who, with apologies, they can't use the toilet, for example, they're a grown adult, maybe you physically don't have the strength to go and move them to the toilet every time they need to go and shower them and move them. Dementia, for example, Alzheimer's, these things, I mean, sometimes you can't be there to look after them all the time. Sometimes they want the independence of living on their own, and they don't necessarily want to feel a little bit degraded that they have to be cared for by someone who they themselves cared for. So there's all sorts of reasons. To sum it up, I don't think there is a quote Islamic answer to this. It's really a case-by-case basis, based on need, situation, availability, and so forth. I had this discussion recently with some people who were kind of saying something along the lines of what I was mentioning, that kind of we Muslims don't do this. I'm like, well, a lot of us here in North London, we've got like a one-room flat, maybe. And it's not really even comfortable to have someone there. We have to work at least 8 hours a day, maybe 12 hours a day. How are you also going to add being a caretaker onto that as well? Of course you can adjust your life. You can maybe move somewhere cheaper where you can get a bigger place or not have to work so much. But I'm saying, there's sometimes a gap between what we say and the realities we're actually living in. So it's a very complex question.
What are your thoughts, Nishat? Does it make us are we being bad daughters, bad Muslims for maybe looking at that option?
In Islam, it is, although there's no clear-cut answer of what we should do, but it definitely says that we need to look after our parents. We've got Surah Al-Isra, which finishes the verses 23 and 24, I think, which finishes with Rabbi Irhamhuma Kama Rabbayani Sagira. It starts with, Allah has commanded you to worship Him and then, you know, be obedient to your parents, not even saying off to them, and then looking after them. And then it finishes with this verse where we're praying, you know, for the well-being and, you know, looking after, for Allah to look after our parents like we were, how they looked after us. Now, how are we looking after does not mean caring for them yourself personally. You know, looking after them is, you know, the well-being that, you know, is put, what have you done for their well-being? And then you've also got the Risalatul Hukuk, where, you know, the treaties of your parents is stated in there, where, you know, that it is their, you know, you've got a right, your parents' rights and, you know, your brother's right. But I think if you have made provisions for the well-being of your parent or your grandparent, I think that's you looking after them. I think there's this difference where people living in the East and living in the West, because I think there's a lot of, in the West you've got both the mother and the father, or the son and the daughter, or son and wife, that have to work to support themselves, you know, and there's nobody at home then to look after your parents, you know, and if you think that they're better cared for somewhere else, then that is in their best interest. Also, I watched this program. It was a Gujarati program by one of the other Islamic channels, where they brought in women to talk about, you know, care homes. And one of the mothers there said, and she was very, you know, emotional about it. She's like, you know, we don't want to go to care homes. But then what if there isn't anybody to look after them? You know, you want them, you know, in their best interest to be looked after. What if there isn't anybody available? I also have my sister who's done some care work. You know, she went from homes to homes, or looking after elderly people. And she said to me, it's such a hard job to do that, you know. And some, you know, the good thing, alhamdulillah, is that if you choose not to send your parents to a care home, if you choose to have them at home, you know, first of all, you'll have to have somebody at home making sure there's somebody to open the door for them, you know. Sometimes you have to be carried in a hearse or something, you know, to care for them. And although and it is tiring, it is a full-time job. You've got to be there 24/7 to care for them. Now, it is really, when you decide whether you want your parent in a care home, I think it is down to a lot of reasons. You don't just say, oh, I won't find it. You know what, let's just do it. You know, there's that financial factor, there is that physical factor, you know, there's that care interest for them is a factor, you know. So a lot of things goes into making a decision where, you know, people, if they do send their
Before going back to Sala, I'm just going to ask Sister Amina, is there anything that you've highlighted religiously that focuses on the rights of the parents assistant, Nishat?
You know, the Quran and Hadith, they focus on respect and good treatment. And the responsibility for caring is there, but I don't really think that's the issue at hand, because, again, it's not like people are, for the most part, dumping elderly people on the street and saying, well, we just don't want them anymore. A lot of times it is a question of what you think is in their best interest, which may or may not actually be in their best interest. For example, there was another issue that prompted a BBC program a few years ago about abuse in care homes here, and one of the people who was being interviewed, not a Muslim, just a white British person, she was saying she spent 2 years looking for a good care home for her mother to live in, and she heard this was the best one. So it's not like she didn't care about her mother, and I think that's where the dialogue tends to get a bit mixed up in our community. It's the idea that they don't care about their parents and we do. But the realities are more complex. And I mean, I do think by and large, the reality of human beings and the human condition is such that generally relatives will care about each other more than others. And a lot of people who work in the healthcare profession / the sort of profession as well, they're just overworked, and they don't necessarily have even the time to spend with people that they should have. So there are a lot of things which, you know, do make it perhaps not the most ideal solution. But again, it's a complicated world, and how someone chooses to fulfill their responsibility is an individual situation.
How do you feel, Sarah? Do you feel that, especially the responsibility in the decision making always falls on the female or the daughters in the family? Do we just presume that it's going to be the daughter's job, or do we think it's a male job as well? What do you think?
From my experience, I don't know. I haven't ever thought about it, but now that you've raised it, I think it always has been the daughter that I know has done the research and looked into different options and what is best for their mum or dad.
Maybe we should have the discussion with our parents before, God forbid, they should be in a situation where they're incapacitated and we have to make that decision for them to see what they want. Because, being part of my family being part Middle Eastern, is that there's this assumption, that's why I was asking the question, that as soon as they get old, they're going to move in with their daughter, or their son, or whichever favourite child they have. They're just going to rock up after how many years, and you're going to take care of me because I took care of you. And it's basically it's emotional blackmail, basically. And then you have, all the family panicking as to oh my God, which one is she going to go to today? Because, as we said earlier, people have lives, they have their children, there's mortgages to pay for. Some people just don't have the capacity, the mental capacity to deal with, your mum wants to watch soap operas all day. You don't want, what do you do? But are the parents being unfair to think, assume that we're going to take care of them?
Not only that, but I think our family structure has changed compared to our parents' time. Maybe quite a while ago, all the family was available to kind of pitch in and help, and it was
around each other.
Yeah, but now, for example, the daughter would be at home and she would be able to care for her mum. But now we're all out, we're all working or studying.
But does she have to? Why does she even want to? When we say care, she might want to just get a carer to come and take care of her mum, or maybe the husband and the mother-in-law don't get on, so she can't. Cause friction.
If I'm putting myself into the parents' shoes, I think I would be quite offended if my daughter said to me that, you know what, I can't look after you, I think I would take that personally. And the issue is not having to look after parents just because, or because they're different, or because I think it's that specific care, when that specific care you cannot provide. For example, if somebody with dementia, if your parents in old age have dementia, there's a lot of care that you need to put in there, and if you can't provide the care, that's when, you think about, there are people, there are places that can better care for that.
That's
situation.
Almost looked at as certain communities quite shameful. With my grandmother, she's 84 now, and she's losing her faculties a little bit, and she has 7 daughters in the Middle East, or alhamdulillah, they're quite well to do. But the bickering that goes on between the sisters as to who's going to take care of grandma, and they're financially, alhamdulillah, in a position where they could get helpers in, but it's this, well, no, she brought us into the world, and then the friction that it causes amongst the sisters, or you didn't come at 12 o'clock on the dot to pick her up, why, or the sister who is doing the most work, it causes so much tension in the family. It's oh my God, and then you have that sister thinks she's better than me because she took her for an extra hour, and it's well, why don't you just get some help? But we can't. It's so shameful. What would the neighbours say if they saw a stranger come in the house?
So it's stigmatized to have a carer come into the house. I mean, it's a completely different situation having someone live somewhere else versus just, I hate to make the analogy, but domestic help.
Well, it is, because you have this idea about, families can you trust them, and someone will have to look after the carer, and how do you know? But really, we have a duty to look after the child, but then it's at the end of the day, your marriage is falling apart because, unfortunately, your husband may want to spend time with you and doesn't really want, a grandmother who's losing her faculties in the house all the time.
Or maybe he won't even allow her.
Exactly. So, I know specifically in Iran, it's almost become quite trendy. There are some care homes being opened up, and they were doing an interview with some, as Nishat had said, with some mothers, and they felt, they were really upset, very emotional that, we have these children, how could they put us here? And then the daughter was saying, well, but I have a family, I work 7 hours, I pay for you to be put in this place, and, I'm trying to do my best. So no matter what she did, it wasn't good enough, and it was just so hard. I know of a masjid in North London that the older generation have actually requested the trustees to make an old people's home, I don't like that term, but that's basically what it is, because they don't want to be with their daughter-in-laws or their family. They want to be near the masjid and don't have to commute. They want to be in the Islamic environment because their children may have married someone who isn't Muslim or a different culture, and they actually are quite excited. And it's Islamically, for the masjid, it's quite a new phenomenon. Like, what do we do Islamically? Because we don't really push the idea of having a knob, but there's quite a large number that have petitioned it. Do you think that's a good idea if we ran something for our senior citizens?
Yeah, of course. And I think that ideology in the West and in the developing countries is that your father and your mother perhaps would have, been through a very active life until their old age. And, when they have to stay at home, being looked after, nobody there to spend that time with them, I think they would prefer to be in a care home where, they have activities planned for them. They can go to the masjid, people come in, you meet people with, similar age. And I think, but that's not all provided for in other countries, you see. So then, parents in that country might not prefer that. And in those countries, I come from Africa, and I think it's very, help is very easily available. You can easily employ somebody, a maid, to be at home for domestic work, but also they could help with the, care for that parent. But I think if the parents are up for it, and if it is in their interest, then yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea.
And then you have married couples who, God forbid you should have your partner, strokes and heart attacks, they can be quite debilitating. And then again, it's the wife everybody expects that she has to drop everything to take care of. Is that really healthy, though, I'm going to give it to you, Sarah. Is that really healthy to just presume that, when something happens, it's your test, carry on with it, do the best you can?
So if your husband has a heart attack or any... as in to presume that you would care for him?
Yeah.
I would hope so. Like, you're not just going to dump him because he had a heart attack.
Well, no, imagine that, he's quite heavy, he's bigger, taller, you've got to,
Realistically, if it was like, imagine a big husband and a slight, she's going to have to ask for help. She's going to have to...
And what if you were young? There's a lot of incidences of young couples, something happening, strokes happening, and then, I was going to say lumbered, that's not the right word, you now have to deal with this situation. Wouldn't it be easy? I mean, does anyone want us to suffer? He's put these provisions here, like in England, alhamdulillah, we have social services, we have all these facilities. Wouldn't it be easier for you to be put in a nice little care home, you go and visit, and you come home and you go and visit.
I don't know where you're going with this.
I'm just saying, maybe we need to open our minds a little bit and think, we're in places where we can get help. Maybe it's too much, because I've seen so many couples and people be broken because they feel that they need to take on all the burden.
I think with couples it's different. I think maybe I don't know, I can't speak for all women, but you would feel kind of obliged to look after your husband. Well, not obliged, but you'd feel like you'd want to, because...
But why wouldn't that obligation not fall on your parents?
I was just going to make a point. If we've spoken about someone with dementia, so for example, if your parents develop dementia, God forbid, then we've kind of all agreed that they would be more suited to a care home environment. But then...
I didn't say that. Just being devil's advocate.
But what about things like, in most elderly people, they begin to regress and they lose their memory, and they, you have to have a lot more patience with your parents as they get older. Would that be okay to ask to put them in a care home then, or is it only if they've got like a solid diagnosis that?
Well, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Amina?
I think it's really the sort of thing you have to handle on a case-by-case basis. I do agree with what you said, that it is good to discuss these things before they come up, God forbid, and to respect the person's preference. I think also, just from another angle, I personally wouldn't enjoy being in an environment where I was seen as a burden, even if no one ever said it to my face. You get a sense of these things, and again, it's against your dignity. And I would personally rather be in a situation that was perhaps less comfortable, but where I felt like people weren't hating me being there, or it wasn't causing stress. And I think that's important to look at too. But it's very complicated. There's a lot of questions in life that don't have easy answers.
I think it would be good if again, going back to the community, if we had these open discussions and supported each other with that decision, because, you know, a lot of the time it's thought about, my friend's family member's friend has been diagnosed with something, and he's basically regressed to a 3-year-old. It's not dementia, but it's a thing, and she has really aged 10 years in 1 month. And because everyone just expects that she needs to, this is her test, that she needs to go and do it. And she hasn't even told people that she's put him into a care home, because it's just too much to deal with. And I just think, you know, there is, in certain cultures, there is this demonization of people who say, I can't manage, actually. As if, you know, if you're in the position, you could do better. But, you know.
No, I don't think there should be any shame in saying, I need help, or I can't, you know, no one's a superwoman or can do everything. If you are finding challenges in caring for someone, or there's so many people now, like children or minors, that care for their parents, they easily have access to help. So it should be the same for an adult caring for their elderly parent.
I think
I know there is a stigma attached, but in an ideal society, I wish there wasn't.
But I don't think it is shame only. I think as a child, I think you feel like you want to do something for your parents, you know. It's not just the parents not thinking, oh, you know, I'm going to be a burden and I'm not going to be able, you know, they're not going to be able to look after me.
Yeah.
As a child, you want to be able to look after your parents as well as they did for you. And when you think that you can't do that, and you call in, you know, outside help, whether putting them in a care home, that is you providing for them, that is you caring for them in their best interest.
Yeah.
But a lot of parents don't see that. My grandmother doesn't see somebody coming to help her as the best thing. She's like, well, I've had daughters, I've had to change your nappies when you were younger, I've had to deal with you wailing in the middle of the night, why can't you do it for me? And it's like, it's emotional blackmail. Some people, not all women, and I think this is a stereotype that many people have, are natural nurturers, or, you know, have the patience of a saint that can deal with that. You know, not all men and females get on with their parents. Let's just face it, there's sometimes you can't stand being in the room with them. And I think we need to have maybe more religious places that, you know, training that our youth can have to make sure they're not isolated, but like the mosque did, make a old people's home.
But I think it does put a lot of pressure on the child. I mean, recently my own mother, she not a mental health issue, but she had a health concern, and she was in a lot of physical pain, and it was hard for me to see her in that pain and not be able to do anything about it. So if I was to imagine that one day my mum would need 24/7 attention from just me, I think that I would feel that maybe it would be better for my own mother to be in an enabling environment for her to be amongst.
Well, there's services and there's a rotation where you don't have to take. How would you feel if someone said, "Oh, come on, you've passed your sell-by date, let's put you into it"?
Like I said, these are very difficult situations, but I don't think anyone's really implying that that there is a certain sell-by date and we just want to cast off people at a certain age. But it's just that the realities are very complex, and as you mentioned, situations are complex. And I think perhaps one of the challenges is some people, when they get older, not everyone, but some people, like you mentioned, emotional blackmail, sometimes the emotional faculties change too, and that can be a little bit, make it an even more challenging situation. I think it is good to have more dialogue about this sort of thing as a religious community. I do feel like we tend to try to gloss over these things with a very simple brush and, you know, idealistic world, and everyone can do this or that, so why don't you do this or that, instead of looking at actually what's happening.
See, I kind of go the opposite way when it comes, I have one child, so he's a teenager, and he's always like, oh God, when I get married, Mum, you know,
Can you move that and leave you alone?
Exactly, that too, but I have to, you know, take care of you. I'm like, well, no, you don't have to take care of me. I can take care of myself, or I'll make my own provisions. Thank you very much. You don't I don't want him walking around thinking, oh my God, he's, you know, 15 now, but it's not your responsibility. I would like you to, you know, check in on me and see if I'm okay. But I don't want him to walk around with this assumption that I'm going to move in with him, that he owes me the rest of his life because I happen to be his mum. And in certain cultures, that's it. I brought you into this world. So for the rest of your life, anything you do, you're going to have to thank me. It's like, I'm actually the reverse. I'm like, no, go live your life and send me a postcard.
Well, I think that was the reality for a lot of history, and that there really wasn't much option, economically speaking, for people, that they did end up having to be reliant on their children, which is one reason why having children was so important. And I think one of the challenges we have as Muslims in general is sometimes I feel like we still look at the way things were, say, 300 years ago or 500 years ago in terms of the social structure and the quote-unquote traditional society, and we try to superimpose that on here, whereas the actual physical lives that we're living in terms of work and the amount of education you need and all of that,
having to work till you're like 65 or something to get a pension if you're a woman now, or how was that?
But they have pensions nowadays. I mean, maybe
But
500 years ago you weren't getting a pension.
But you still have to work a certain number of years to access that. Nishant, how would you feel, just putting a question out there, if your mother-in-law, God forbid, I don't know if you have a mother-in-law, but if you did, and she became ill and your husband came and said, well, she's moving in, you have to take care of her, would you be comfortable with that?
I think it depends on different families, how what your family grounds are on such topics. I think I would happily have her in my house.
Is it because you've had the discussion, or?
No, we haven't had that discussion, no. But my father-in-law actually has dementia, but they don't live here. And because they're in Africa, my mother-in-law looks after him, constantly. But they've got help, and we've got maids that, will spend some time with him, or, get him stuff if he needs it. And I think that's how I've watched people grow, and that is why I think I am like that, where I wouldn't want, unless there were specific things that they needed that I couldn't provide for, then I would think about it. But otherwise, I think, I don't know, I would want them near me.
No, we have different views, alhamdulillah. What I would advise our dear viewers is do hold on to the people you love, your mothers, your fathers, your in-laws. You never know when you'll be in that position, and do have that discussion before things go, God forbid, pear-shaped, while everyone's faculties are working, and decide what you want to do as a family. I wish you all well. Hope to see you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
If you've been affected by anything discussed in this episode, do speak up to find assistance at your GP, local authorities, or helplines online.